Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Zach and Jeffe. We are here back with Fantasy Central. We are going to talk about the fantasy draft, kind of talk about your top running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends that you need to be looking out for, plus some sleepers that you can get throughout the draft to help you win your fantasy team. Like I said, I'm Zach, and I'm here with,
Jeffe.
and we are back with Fantasy Central. It's been a while. We stopped doing Fantasy Central, what, about week 15 last year?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been a long time since we've been with you guys. We want to thank you for tuning in, especially if you watch the Horsemen Pro Football Talk podcast when we have Brad on here. We appreciate everything you guys do. We do want to say this coming season, the bulk of our video content is going to be moving to Patreon. Patreon is a platform where you can help contribute to us to provide you with better quality content. We will be providing exclusives, rewards for different membership levels. It's going to be awesome. We're definitely going to be hitting the fantasy value very hard. So make sure you want to check that out. It's Patreon, patreon.com/Horsemen Sports. There's a little bit of everything. It helps support us. We appreciate it. If you don't want to go that route, you can still check out every episode through the audio version through your favorite podcast platform. And of course, if you want to help contribute without the monetary purpose behind it, just like, share, subscribe, pass it on to your friends. We appreciate you guys. And with that, let's get right to it. You ready, Jeffe?
Yeah, let's get into it, man. Been ready for this one.
All right. Pretty much every draft is going to start heavy with the running backs. Doesn't matter if in PPR or regular league, dynasty league, every draft usually starts with the running back. So we'll start there. Let's talk about our top 10, kind of break it down into the top 5, because I know you and I have some differences here. So who's your top 5 running backs that are going to be coming off the board this year?
So I think the unanimous number one is going to be the same old, same old. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Christian McCaffrey, the obvious number one.
Yep, agreed.
2020 seems to be an anomaly. At least we would hope so. We don't want to see Christian McCaffrey missing most of his seasons with injury. So assuming he's able to stay healthy, he's still going to be the best fantasy asset you can get. Then as we go on, it started to get tricky. These next ones, there's a lot to take into account, but you have to take the rushing king from the last 2 seasons. Derrick Henry seems like a great choice for number 2 because he's probably going to score a lot of touchdowns like he normally does, get a lot of yards. The only downside to Derrick Henry is the fact that he doesn't catch a lot of passes.
Yeah, so here's where we differ. I have Dalvin Cook at number 2, my second best running back off the board, but I also have Derrick Henry as number 3. Like you said, he's the defending league rushing champion. The only reason I have McCaffrey and Cook ahead of him is because of their passing game upside. You would think with Henry's style of run game, he's bound to get hurt, but the dude's only missed 2 games in his entire 5-year career, which is absurd for a running back. So until that day comes, I have Henry as a number 3. I think Cook beats him out because he has that passing game upside. He still gets the touches for the Vikings. And I think he was the second or third best running back last year. So that's where we differ. Who do you have at number 3?
At number 3, I have Zeke coming back and having a big time year. Obviously last year, Dak gets hurt, it changes the offense. The offensive line gets hurt, it changes what Zeke can do. So assuming that the roster can at least stay, somewhat more healthy than they were last year, I think Zeke has a big opportunity to come back and be what we remember him being. And it seems like he made it a point in the offseason to get into really good shape. He looks really fit right now. So I expect Zeke to come back and have a huge year.
Where do you have Zeke going in the draft?
These guys, I have them going 1, 2, and 3. I think most of the first round here is going to be running back heavy this year for sure.
See, I don't know, man. I mean, Zeke, there's a lot of upside with Zeke. He is more than capable of being one of the best fantasy running backs out there. But for me, my overall value for him is probably in the second round, to be honest. I have him listed as my 9th best running back. I think, like I said, that upside, that ceiling is there. He just hasn't produced the last couple seasons. I know it has to do with Dak Prescott not being there last season, but still, you would think not being able to really move the ball, having a backup quarterback, that Zeke would have been able to carry the load and still produce productively for fantasy, and he just didn't do that. So I have him as being valued as a second round pick right now. In pretty much all the mock drafts I've been looking, he's been bouncing around in between 5 and 9. So I don't know. I definitely think there's a chance he could break out and have another humongous year. I just don't know if I'm ready to take that chance at picking him number 3.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, with the Dak Prescott shoulder thing that's going on that kind of weighed into my decision. Maybe they try to use Dak less and not have him get 400 yards a game and have to throw 35 times a game. So that was, or, if he is throwing, he more dump downs to Zeke, which in PPR leagues is very valuable for running backs to get those catches. So, there was a little of that going on in my mind. It pretty much all hinges around whether, Dak's there, the circumstances coming around Dak. But I think Zeke has a chance to be a huge fantasy asset.
No, he very well could. Who's your 4th best running back?
My 4th is going to be J.K. Dobbins. Guy that, he barely got opportunity last year for whatever reason. Anytime he was in the game, he was explosive. Fantasy managers were loving it because he was breaking off all kinds of big runs. Down toward the end of the season, he was kind of their goal line back, the guy that they were using near the goal line. So all reports right now coming out of Baltimore camp is that the ceiling for J.K. Dobbins this year is going to be sky high, and that his fantasy value just keeps rising and rising. Some people are talking about Gus Edwards, and he might take some of the shine away from J.K. Dobbins. But what we saw from J.K. last year, I just think he's going to be the star in that offense that loves to run a lot. So J.K. Dobbins is my 4th player coming off the board.
What part of the round are you targeting him as?
The number 4 pick.
Overall?
Overall, yep.
Oh, my God, dude. Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. Big.
Dude, all right. So we're going to have to break here we got a pretty big difference. I have Dobbins as a 20th best fantasy back this season. I do think he has the potential to be very good, but I just don't see how you can even throw him up there in the top 5 like that. You have guys like Alvin Kamara, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley. You're saying that J.K. Dobbins is going to get drafted before all those guys?
I would, because look, when you talk about all the guys that you just named, there are different circumstances for each guy that will limit the usage. Even though all those guys are stars and are going to be very good, there are different circumstances for each that I think will play into them not having the same fantasy value at the end of the year as J.K. Dobbins.
Okay. All right, fair enough. I guess time will tell on that. Who's your number 5?
Number 5 is Big AK, Alvin Kamara, coming in at 5, which I think will be his draft position. Again, I think first round should be running back heavy. Especially the running backs that catch a lot of passes. And the only reason I have Alvin Kamara at number 5 is because of Michael Thomas about to miss the first 6 or 7 weeks of the season. I think is going to limit what Alvin Kamara is going to be able to do, because who else do they have? Teams are going to focus on Alvin Kamara. They're going to smother him all day. So Alvin Kamara led the entire NFL running backs in fantasy value last year. So it was tough to have him at number 5. I think he could easily be a top 3. But again, because of the Michael Thomas being out, that's going to hurt his value as we get into the season, and you just don't know how the offense is going to look. We saw when Taysom Hill was in the lineup last year, Alvin Kamara had some of his worst games of the season. So it'll be interesting to see how the new quarterbacks are going to use the running backs in the passing game, because that, again, in PPR leagues, heavily influences what you do with your running backs.
Yeah, so I have Kamara at number 4, right in between the 3 spot that you were talking about and the number 5 where you think he's going to go, or where you think he should go. He was the top-ranked running back last season. He was second in average behind only McCaffrey, which we know McCaffrey had season-ending injury, so he didn't finish out the regular season. Kamara is an excellent back in the passing game, and he's capable of having a monstrous rushing game as well. But like you said, my only worries, though, is, number 1, the strength of schedule versus rushing defense through the first 14 games. It's the lowest out of my top 4 running backs. It's the 20th easiest overall, but that's still way back there. He has a pretty tough stretch against run defenses. And number two, he has a new quarterback with presumably Jameis Winston under center. However, even with Drew Brees and Michael Thomas out last year, Kamara still stepped up and he still shined. So I'm going to take him number 4. Like you said, you got him number 5. I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head in that area. So can't go wrong with Kamara. Either way, the dude's a playmaker.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the best in the league.
All right, moving on. Who's number 6? Number 6, you have Dalvin Cook.
That's where I have Dalvin Cook going. And the only reason at all that I have Dalvin Cook this low is because of his injury history and missing a couple games here and there. You know, you just can't count on him to stay healthy for a full schedule, or else he would have been another top 3 guy, somebody that I think is a top 3 running back. When we're not talking about fantasy, he's just a top 3 running back in the NFL. He can do everything. He's explosive. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he sees the holes well. You know, he again just the perfect running back, really. And I wanted to put him higher, but again, the only reason he's number 6 for me is going to be because of the injury history.
Yeah, and I've kind of noticed that. Like I said, I have Dalvin Cook as my second best running back, number 2 overall in the draft. And my only concern with him is his injury and how it affects his playing time. In 2017, he only played in 4 games, 11 games in 2018, and only 14 in 2019 and 2020. But his ceiling, because he is such a good back and capable of making plays in any facet of the game, it heavily, in my opinion, heavily outweighs the injury risk. So unless Christian McCaffrey is somehow available, I'm taking Cook no matter where I'm at in the draft. That's how I
And
feel.
what did you say you had him at, number 2?
Number 2, yep. He's my
Okay.
number 2 overall.
Yeah, if he can stay healthy, I could see him being the best running back in fantasy if he stays healthy for a full schedule.
Yeah, it's just a matter of weighing that injury risk compared to the reward on it, you know?
Yeah.
So to me, everybody's different. To me, I'll take that risk with somebody like Dalvin Cook. Now, Saquon Barkley is a completely different story, and we'll get to that. But Dalvin Cook, I think he played in 14 games 2019, 2020. The regular season in fantasy is only 14 games. So, hey, he puts out 14 before he gets hurt. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, useful.
All right, so let's move on to your next guy. Who you have at number 7?
Number 7, I have Aaron Jones. The free Aaron Jones movement, you know, came into effect last year. He finally got the snaps we were hoping he was going to get, and he had an amazing year for the Packers. And even though he's a star in the NFL, he's a very good back. I think it's going to hurt his value a little bit that A.J. Dillon's there. And coming into his second year in this offense, I just think you have to use a guy like that, especially as big as A.J. Dillon is. I think he'll be in a lot of their goal line situation type things. You know, Aaron Jones is likely to have the pass catching role, which is really going to help his value, could vault him into the top 5 before the end of the fantasy season. But I do think having A.J. Dillon there, he'll get enough usage and take away some of those touchdowns to kind of hurt Aaron Jones' value. But I still have him being probably the 8th pick, the 7th or 8th pick in the draft. I think a wide receiver will slip in here toward the late first round. But Aaron Jones should definitely be a top 10 fantasy pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have him as my 7th best back. I actually have him about early second round because I think there are a few more receivers that may have the value enough to get up in the first round. So 7th best back, but he's an early second round pick if you're in a 12-man league. If you're in a 10-man league or smaller, probably about mid-second. He will get his touches even with A.J. Dillon there, and he will put up the fantasy points. But based off the projected run defense schedule, the Jones and the Packers have the second toughest 14-game stretch in the league. So I think the bulk of his production would come out of the passing game, which is all right because you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, right? And plus you got Devontae Adams on the outside. That'll open up your running backs. So if they didn't have such a tough stretch defensively, I would have Jones higher up. But because that's the case, he's my number 7 back. Like I said, I have him going early second round.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we agree then.
Yeah. Agreeing on something, huh? All right, number 8 running back for you is Austin Eckler.
Austin Eckler, yeah,
Okay.
somebody who's shown that he can be an all-purpose back, a three-down back, and in fantasy, that is a marvelous thing to have. But kind of like Dalvin Cook, we just need to see Austin Eckler stay healthy. Consistency is not a problem. It's just the availability that's the problem, and it's the only reason that I don't have him as a top 5 back. Again, because of his pass catching ability, he could easily be a top 5, maybe even a top 3 back because they don't like to bring other receivers in there. They still have Keenan Allen, and then people talk about Mike Williams, but I think having Austin Eckler as that all-purpose weapon is a big deal, and somebody that if it comes to the late first round and I have the 8th or ninth pick in the draft, I'm going to be real happy if Austin Eckler's sitting there.
Yeah, I agree. I'm actually really hoping Austin Eckler falls to me. Like you said, he only played in 10 of 16 games last season, which is a big red flag. However, he is now the RB1 with the Los Angeles Chargers, and he has huge passing game upside. Plus, the Chargers have a very favorable schedule when it comes to going against run defenses. So if Austin Eckler is there, to me, in the second round, I'm picking him up. I think he's going to be an early second round pick right behind Aaron Jones.
I would have to agree.
It's 2 for 2 in a row we agree on. Look at that.
Great minds thinking alike today.
Oh, yeah. I think this is where we break just a little bit, though. Number 9, who do you have as your 9th best running back on the board?
I'm staying with the hometown team here, going with Jonathan Taylor. We saw Jonathan Taylor in the last half of last season really came on strong, especially in the last outing. Obviously, the 253 yards, couple touchdowns, and the explosive ability that he brings is a nice change of pace from what we've had. Marlon Mack was great for the Colts, but he's a real patient kind of runner, right? And we see Jonathan Taylor come in. He's so explosive, and he learned to read the holes the way Marlon was doing it. But as soon as he saw it, he was jetting, and we saw him break off a lot of 6-yard plus runs there in the last half of the season. And another thing you love to see is his ability to be a pass catcher. There was obviously that the one throw Phillip Rivers had down the sideline, and he had to reach out for it in, just barely got it with his fingertips, hauled it in, ran in for a touchdown. And those are the kinds of plays you like to see, especially from a fantasy value standpoint with a running back, just being able to get open down the field, being able to make those kinds of catches. And if they're going to keep using them like that, which, the only thing that hurts his value is the fact that Nyheim Hines is such a good pass catcher and so good at those gadget plays. Marlon Mack is coming back this year. Assuming he stays healthy, he's going to take some of those carries away. But Jonathan Taylor, especially near the goal line, Jonathan Taylor is very powerful. He should be that guy. And in a run-heavy offense, he should have a very big year.
Yeah, I agree with you. You kind of took all the notes I have down on Taylor and said them, so I'm not even going to retrace your steps there. He should have another huge year with the Colts, especially signing Carson Wentz and instantly upgrading the Colts passing game. To me, Taylor's value is a late first round into the second round if he's still there. I have him as the 10th overall pick and the 5th best running back on the board. But because Marlon Mack is coming back and he's 1 year removed from his own 1,000-yard season, and then you have the Nyheim Hines, who's the Colts' go-to passing down back, that kind of hurts Taylor there. But who knows, if he's rolling, the Colts might just stick with him most of the time, and he could put up huge numbers.
Yeah, because as Colts fans, we heard a lot last year that team is fine with going with the hot hand. They like to use all their guys, but if one of them's on fire one day, and it's very likely to be Jonathan Taylor because of the skill set he brings, then we could see Jonathan Taylor have a couple really, really big games.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to the 10th best running back on your board.
So the 10th was tough for me. There were a couple guys I didn't want to leave out. But there's a name that we haven't talked about yet, and I just couldn't bring myself to leave him off. So we had to put Saquon Barkley as the 10th best running back. And really the only thing that hurts his value is that we're not sure when he's coming back quite yet. So some reports have said he should be ready for the start of the season. Some reports are saying he could miss 2 to 4 games at the beginning of the season. We're just not sure quite yet. A lot of mixed reports out there. And then you look at the receivers that they brought in. They have a huge stable of receivers. So are we going to see Danny Dimes dumping it off to the running back much? I'm just not sure. I think they're going to use the receivers there, so we might not see Saquon get as many catches as we're used to him getting. So that's going to hurt his value. But he's still he's a freak of nature. When Saquon is in and playing, he's maybe the best running back in the NFL. He's definitely in that conversation. So I had to put him in the top 10.
Yeah, I also have him as my top 10, or as my number 10 running back on the board. Huge risk reward here. He was an RB1 a few seasons ago, but his production dropped a bit in 2019. And then injury ended his 2020 campaign in just 2 games last season. I believe there is a lot more value to grab in the first round and early second round than Barkley, but the intrigue is there and the reward is there if, and this is a big if, he returns to his 2018 form. So I personally am going to be avoiding him unless he somehow falls into the late second or third round. Then it's a risk I'm willing to take. But right now he's trending in the top 5 picks overall. I just don't see the risk reward being there. I think there's better, safer value you can get in that top 5 spot. But hey, if you want to roll the dice and take it, it's a risk worth willing to take.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't go wrong either way. Because of the name value, I wouldn't expect him to drop to where I'd like to pick him. Like you said, that mid to late second round, maybe early third round feels a little more comfortable for me with his situation. But I mean, he could very easily be a top 5 running back or a top 5 fantasy player in general. So I really can't go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So we ran down your top 10. We left one guy off my list, and he's my number 6 back overall, who I think is going to be going probably in the first round, maybe early second round, and that's Nick Chubb in Cleveland. As with Jonathan Taylor, Chubb's value is also a late first rounder, early second. Why? Because he just so happens to share the backfield with Kareem Hunt, which cuts down on his touches. Plus, he only played in 12 of 16 games last season. However, Chubb still produces in fantasy, and the Browns have the easiest projected schedule against run defenses through the first 14 games. So I have Nick Chubb as my 6th best running back. I have him coming off the board late first, early second. What do you think?
Yeah, that it was hard for me to leave Chubb off of the top 10 because of his skill set. He's just so good, and he can do everything. But like you said, Kareem Hunt being there, he takes away, especially some of the passing down work that we would like to see Nick Chubb have. Now, I'm not so much worried about the injuries. It was unfortunate last year he missed some games, but he's a tough back. He's a big bruising back, and I think he'll be durable, especially in a run heavy offense. You would expect him to have a very good season. So if I didn't have to put Saquon in my top 10, Nick Chubb was going to be in there. But that was the only reason he wasn't there. I think Nick Chubb is very capable of being one of the best backs in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, there's your top 10 from both of us. I'm going to throw a few more names out there that's going to have a good season. I wouldn't necessarily be aiming to draft them in the first or second round, but my 11th back is Joe Mixon, followed by Najee Harris, and David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, and Antonio Gibson. Are there any other names you want to throw out there, Jeffe?
Well, I like on your next one, you have Chris Carson. I think he's somebody who is very underrated in the league. Somebody that would be somebody I draft him in the third round. I think that's about right for him. Good value for him. So I like Chris Carson a lot. The only other names you just said him, Najee Harris. A lot of reports saying he's going to be very good, which is unfortunate. Screw the Steelers, but seems like Najee Harris is going to be that dude, and I think he's going to be very, very good. And Antonio Gibson, Washington, has been very clear that he's the guy, and they want him to have an amazing season. So I could see him having a big workload to help out his new quarterback.
Yeah, and to kind of hit on Najee Harris, usually when it comes to fantasy, I try to avoid rookies at all costs. But because the Pittsburgh Steelers rushing game was so bad last year and it affected their offense as a whole, they're going to make it an absolute point to get him started early and get him going. So that's why I like Najee Harris. Plus, he's an absolute monster. We watched him at Alabama just completely dominate. Yeah, I think he's going to have a huge year.
Yep, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. So to recap the running backs, I'll read my top 10 list and then Hefe can read his. My number one overall running back is Christian McCaffrey, followed by Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler at number 8, Ezekiel Elliott, number 9, Saquon Barkley at 10. And then going into the 11th spot, I have Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, Dave Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, and mine, we have a lot of the same names here. I have Christian McCaffrey at number 1, Derrick Henry number 2, Zeke coming in at 3, J.K. Dobbins up the board at number 4, Alvin Kamara coming down a little from last year as my number 5 running back. Then we have Dalvin Cook at 6, 7 is Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, just like you, is at 8. Then Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley are 9 and 10, and I had Nick Chubb, Najee Harris, and Antonio Gibson just outside the top 10.
All right. So we're getting ready to switch over to the wide receivers, but I do want to say that if you want to learn more, get more of our list, we have it all posted on Patreon, patreon.com/Horsemen Sports. Get on there. You can get access to all this. We break it down. We got a lot more in-depth analysis for all these guys and more. So you know what you're doing on draft day, and you can get in and win your league, whether it's for bragging rights or some money. Hop in there, subscribe, get a membership, help us out, and you dominate your league. It's a win-win situation.